Good evening, I'm John Batchelor. This is The John Batchelor Show. My friend Mary Kissel, the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal and the host of Opinion Journal, just arriving in studio tonight. She was working already at the Council on Foreign Relations, very happily. And now we've got her attention to move from global matters to the matter of the little bitty Republican Party. Good evening, Mary.
Hi, good evening, John.
Itsy, cute little Republican Party.
Absolutely meanealess to world affairs.
That is struggling right now like little puppies running around looking for leadership.
Direction.
They want to know which way to go. These little bitty puppies who used to have really mean bites, but they're gone, Mary. They're not scaring anybody
anymore. And they're
anymore.
yapping at everyone.
And then we have this one sort of Republican with funny hair who makes a lot of noise, but confuses all of us as to what
direction he's going in.
We're going to entertain. This is an underground meeting tonight of the Save the Republicans Club. Mary Kissel and John Batchelor, and we welcome Mona Charen, who's a member of the Save the Republicans Club from the National Review Online. Mona, welcome to the underground meeting. I'm going to lay out some very odd anecdotes of these last days and ask you and Mary to comment. One, the Trump campaign, according to Vanity Fair, and this was backed up by NBC, doesn't much exist. And I can testify to that because there's no communications department whatsoever. None. There's no communications messaging going on. There are no communication teams in all the states. There's no rapid reaction team. Doesn't exist. Moving on. Fundraising doesn't much exist. I read Charlie Pellegrino of the Fox Business Network tonight. The large donors are missing, but so are the small donors. Apparently, we didn't want to know this, but Reince Priebus asked the candidate to make calls to 20 very prominent donors in the party. These would be bundlers. These would be rich people who know rich people. We're told by Politico that the candidate called 3 of them and quit. Maybe because he doesn't like talking to rich people, not being one himself. We don't know why he quit.
Glad you slipped that in there,
yes,
John.
We are talking about puppies here. Nobody's going to get hurt. There's also that data management, the digital operation that the Cruz campaign ran brilliantly, doesn't exist at the Trump campaign. In fact, the candidate disdains it. This is voter contact, what is called voter touch. You've got to touch voters 6 or 7 times to get them to move. The demographics are fabulous. The demographics allow the candidates and their party and their team to know how many people drive a Volvo and have vacationed west of the Mississippi and were born after 1960. You not only know the percentages, you know their names, you know their addresses.
You know their relatives.
Yes, and what they're dining on. You can do all that. That's what data does, and that's what Get Out the Vote is all about. Mona, I will stop there. We'll assemble the candidates' endorsements that are suddenly unendorsing in these last hours. But the hard question to you, Mona, is something going on in the Republican Party. We've got 30 days to the convention, to the gathering of the Rules Committee before the convention. 30 days. And the presumptive nominee is not the nominee. Mona, have we turned a corner? Not a rebellion so much as everybody acknowledging the fact that Trump can't win. Good evening to you, Mona.
Good evening, John and Mary. Well, it seems to me that the stage we're at right now is not quite the stage of dump Trump. The stage we're at now is of people reckoning with the reality that Trump has not rewritten the rules of politics, that he cannot rely on free media and coast by without a campaign staff and without any of the normal accoutrements of a national campaign. That his claims that he could self-fund were, of course, false. He cannot. Remember he said if he needed to, he could just sell a building. But obviously, that's not the case. So people are grappling with that. With these realities that it's dawning, and plus they're looking at the polls and they're seeing a massacre potentially in a few months' time for not just Trump himself, but for the whole Republican Party down ballot and so forth. And so people are trying to wrap their minds around this and adjust. But I do not know that people, that they have the imagination to say, look, a political party does not have to be the obedient slave of the plurality of primary voters, that at a convention the delegates are actually free to do what they want. That's another step. It's a huge leap. And I haven't seen people getting to that yet.
Mona, the massacre to come may be too kind. There was an ABC News poll out just in these last days that said nearly 70% of voters have an unfavorable view of Trump. 89% of Hispanics. It's 34% of even Republicans. That's more than a third of the party don't like him. So you say that they're not there to the Dump Trump campaign yet, but is there a movement building to release the delegates in Cleveland?
Well, and by the way, let me just add one more statistic to the one you named, to those that you named, because this one is really interesting, maybe the most interesting. I mean, there was also 89% of Hispanics have a negative view, 94% of black. But here's the really interesting statistic. 53% of whites without a college degree have a negative view of Trump. And that was supposed to be his constituency. So that's really telling, I think. Are they getting to the dumb Trump stage yet? No, I do not think they are.
Wait, I'm going to argue with you here.
Okay,
from the Hill. All right. Duncan Hunter, the co-chair of Trump's House Leadership Committee, Duncan Hunter of California, who was early on endorsing the candidate. We all wondered, what has he got in this? What's Hunter want? Well, today he said that he shouldn't be confused with a Trump surrogate, the co-chair of the Trump House Leadership. Mona, politicians are not brave people, especially congressional politicians. They are mob gatherers. They march with parades. They also have a keen sense of the wind. The wind is shifting. I go on, Mona. Paul Ryan, Speaker, the highest elected Republican official, deliberately went out of his way to make sure everybody knew that he was taking a question from the Washington Post. Mona.
Important.
Mona.
Well, God bless him for that.
We don't need dumb Trump. The Washington Post, Mona, the Trump campaign has no explanation about why it's making war on the media it needs in order to communicate to the uncommitted, to the moderates, to the independents. The Trump campaign is walking away from the only way you can win this election.
No question about that. But here's what there is a question about. How would it work? What would be the mechanism? I mean, and who would they nominate? It would be, a bloodbath.
I don't have chapter 2, Mona. We're still on chapter 1.
And haven't we done this in the past? Let's be real. This isn't an entirely unusual situation where the convention nominates someone different.
So we did it in the past, but in an era when there wasn't the kind of populism that we have now, where there wasn't this kind of notion that the voters were completely sovereign. I mean, in the old days, there was a sense that there were the party elders and that there were people who knew best and that they had a certain amount of discretion. And we are so far past that now. The notion that anything can have legitimacy except getting the maximum number of votes is gone.
But so the primary vote, Mona, is in time. It's in time. It's behind us. Events are in the saddle.
Yeah.
The primary vote, we can all speculate about whether this president would be elected if he ran on another day or another year.
Yeah.
The fact that Trump is the presumptive nominee is a test of his skills, of his ability to raise money,
of course,
to unite the party, to reach out to the independents. We've seen no evidence. In fact, there's a theory today. Vanity Fair ran it, Sarah Ellison, and it was picked up by Jonathan Chait of the New Yorker, of the New York Magazine. And if you all don't know those names, those are critical voices for the Democratic Party, very powerful voices. They are both, Chait follow Ellison, entertaining that Trump is founding his own TV network
Right.
That's what this whole game is about. It's not to win the presidency. It's to be Fox Trump, something like that, to monetize
And
himself.
Mona, and to add to this, when the Libertarian candidate is scoring in potentially double digits, doesn't that signal a large portion of disaffected people on the right, in the middle, and
So we
elsewhere?
can't fill in the blank for you, Mona. What happens next? But
Right. Well, that's the thing. What would need to happen very soon, is for some graybeard, somebody who's familiar with the nuts and bolts of conventions and so forth, to set out a scenario in which you change the rules committee changes the rules,
Right,
and then
unbound the delegates on the first ballot, abstain.
Right.
Yes, that's the mechanism. But Mona, first you've got to gather the mob. A mob marched on the castle and surrounded it, and we all bowed to it. We've got a bigger mob, Mona. Our mob is bigger, and we've got evidence in the polling that we are not going over the cliff with Trump. We've got evidence. We can see it. That's what the libertarians mean. And I'll give you a loss, Mona. Mrs. Clinton wins. I'll give you a loss, but hold on to the Senate, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah. The party. The party should not be a suicide pact. I grant you, but I'm worried that there's just this rigidity, this worship of the voters and of the primary results.
Well, if that was true, if that was true, Duncan Hunter would have a backbone and would speak as a surrogate for a man he is chair of his leadership committee.
You can back away from him. That's but it's a very, very different step to dump him as the nominee.
One step at a time. We're going to turn to the Democrats next. We're having too much fun with the Republicans. So we're going to turn to the big, mean, nasty, wolves, the wolves, the den of wolves of the Democrats. We're going to choose a vice president for Hillary Clinton, and it's not going to be Bernie Sanders. Mona Cheriton of the National Review Online, my friend and co-host Mary Kissel, the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal. I'm John Batchelor. I'm John Batchelor with Mary Kissel, my colleague, and Mona Cheriton, my colleague. We're three members of the Save the Republicans underground meeting tonight, but we're turning to the Democrats next because we're going to pick a vice president for Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton's up 12 points nationally, most recent poll. She's up 3 points in Iowa, battleground state. We're told that Utah is now a battleground state. That's how powerful Hillary Clinton is. There aren't enough Democrats in Utah to fill a McDonald's franchise that moment. There aren't enough.
And yet she's still competitive.
And she's competitive.
Amazing.
And Georgia's battleground, good heavens. All right, we need a vice president for Mrs. Clinton that demonstrates that she's all powerful. Mona, I'm going to rule out Elizabeth Warren. Just rule her out.
Okay.
Because we're not going to go left. We're going to go center. Have you got a candidate for us, Mona?
Well, I think that she'll look kindly upon the governor of Virginia, the former governor of Virginia, now senator of Virginia, Tim Kaine. Very safe, very dull, speaks fluent Spanish, kind of got on the nerves of some of the pro-choice people in the state because he provided funding for crisis pregnancy centers when he was governor. He's pretty centrist on that question, and he's in a state where there's a Democratic governor, so that his replacement can be a Democrat. And Hillary is going to want to appeal to the center. She's going to want to reassure people who are very queasy about the idea of pulling the lever for Trump, but who tend to lean to the Republicans, that she's a safe pick. And this would signal that.
But she also wants to occupy center stage. So what about somebody like Julian Castro? He satisfies...
Member of the cabinet, former mayor in Texas.
San Antonio, I believe, right. And Hispanic. What about him?
Well, he doesn't really bring a swing state. He's from Texas. He's got a very thin resume. He was the mayor of San Antonio, and then he was at the Housing and Urban Development, which is, the graveyard of careers. So he really hasn't done much. He's very young. I'm not sure that he really... he's Hispanic, so that's nice, but I'm not sure that he...
Sherrod Brown. Sherrod Brown. Now, that violates Harry Reid's rule. Of
Yes.
course, there's no evidence that Mrs. Clinton is going to obey Harry Reid or anyone else. So.
Well, no, that's true, and he's Ohio, which is a key state.
Right.
So, it's
And
possible.
he's liberal, but he is amenable to Mrs. Clinton's centrist position. My case for Hillary Clinton is that meeting with Bernie Sanders that happened, 48 hours ago at the Capitol Hilton?
Yeah, Tuesday.
Bernie Sanders is deaf, Mona.
John, Bernie Sanders has been boring people his entire life. He's been haranguing them about his political views, and nobody ever wanted to listen to him. And now, for the first time in his life, at the age of 74, he's a rock star. Why would he give that up? I mean, he's having the time of his life. This is what he lived for. So I can imagine.
How hard is it to hear an offer you cannot refuse, Mona? How hard is this to hear?
Very hard. Honestly, they are going to have to drag him out by his ankles.
I disagree with you guys. I think Hillary's going to go to the left. I think
Really?
I do. I think the heart of the Democratic Party is on the left. That Bernie has pulled her left on trade. He's pulled her left on healthcare.
Right, but she did all that in the primary.
She did all that, but that is now, I think, the permanent center of the party. It's the Obama left.
Well-
and so they're going to call Bernie is going to go to that convention and try to use his sway. John is leaning back in his chair.
No, I'm
trying
listening.
to.
It's possible.
He will try
It's
to
possible.
use his sway to influence the platform and also the VP pick. I don't think he'd be happy with a Tim Kaine.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting, and I think you're probably right about what Bernie will try to do. I'm sure you are. But she's probably going to be thinking that, the center of the Democratic Party is more to the left than it was, and she did appeal to that constituency when she was running against Bernie, but she won it. It's done. And now she has a little more flexibility. I mean, you noticed it when she was asked about the term radical Islam. She had been unwilling to say it during the primaries, but now that she's the winner, she's willing to say it. So I do think she's going to try to straddle a bit and do a little bit of the Bill Clinton triangulation as she moves into the general.
30 seconds, Mona. Have you been surprised by how hard Mrs. Clinton is hitting Trump?
No. What? I mean, the biggest, fattest target anybody has ever seen. No, of course she should do that. And besides, otherwise, what would we be talking about? We'd be talking about the email scandal and the Inspector General report.
So
and
she doesn't
the
need a
poor
vice
economy.
president to hit Trump. She'll do it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Mona Charen of the National Review Online, Mary Kissel, the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal. We picked a vice president. It's Warren or it's Kaine. We'll wait. One day story and then back to Hillary Clinton for president. I'm John Batchelor.